Hi everyone. Now in this session we're going to be building upon the work that we've done in our last lesson, where we looked at South Korea's economic development and how successful they have been in really breaking through that boundary of the potential middle income trap. A country of course that has failed to get out of that potential trap is Mexico. If we just take, for instance, Mexico's GDP per capita in 2016, that came in at about $8,201, roughly equivalent to what we see in China. So really interesting that despite many years of economic development and openness to trade, Mexico has failed to really break through to become a newly industrialized country. Okay, we're going to take a look at a number of reasons why that has occurred. Now, there's an excellent report on this, which I will put the hyperlink through to in the description for this video. Okay, so you'll be able to click through, and there's a three-part mini-series that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis have put together, all about the middle income trap and economic development for LEDCs. So let's take a look at what went wrong for Mexico. Well, firstly, it's interesting to note what was right, as cited by the authors here, and that is that Mexico was more open than Ireland was. Ireland we'll look at in our next lesson, from the 1920s through to the 1970s. So we've seen this, of course, with South Korea and with China, that they were exposed to an externally competitive environment, that as the world became more integrated and more globalized, that Mexico was integrated within that system, but yet they've had problems. So let's move this on. Now, this direct quote that I've taken from the article, from one of the articles here, and that Mexico lacked sufficient government effort and discipline to build its state capacity to steer the economy. So what we see here really is a government who really failed to get to grips with the importance of economic development and really helping to direct or steer the economy in an effective manner. Now, what do we see when we compare this with South Korea? Well, of course, South Korea embraced a lot of state capitalism within its model, but also China, of course. The state is almost pervasive in China. It's almost everywhere. So this really isn't a problem in China. So it's an interesting point to note, this one. Now, moreover, they've failed to invest heavily in education, and we've seen the importance of education within the labour force and developing the talent pool for the future to ensure that you have a really high calibre of staff or potential labourers and entrepreneurs coming through to lead those creative, higher value added industries. Okay, so Mexico clearly didn't have that. Next point, absence of government agencies to design industrial policies to promote foreign and domestic investment in areas consistent with Mexico's comparative advantage. So the fact that they did not develop this state capacity meant that certain government agencies were not developed to enable more entrepreneurship to be undertaken, to direct more investment by certain firms into more and better productive and manufacturing processes. Mexico just failed to do this. Agricultural reforms weren't really implemented to improve productivity, something we see in China at the moment that they're trying to tackle. So Mexico really needed to get to grips with these sorts of things, but just didn't do so because of that lack of state capacity. Okay, that's what the authors argue anyway. Okay, so interesting stuff. Let's have a look at our last point here. Investors looked outside of the banking system for financing following economic reform and nationalisation of the banking sector. And this took place in the 1980s. So it's clearly the case that there is a lack of financial allocative efficiency within the Mexican economy here. If you're going to other non-banking sectors to access finance, then the rates at which you may access that capital may be more expensive. That can act as a bit of a hindrance towards further investment, and cause various problems. These sorts of factors here, we do see similarities with China though. The fact that the Chinese banking finance sector does lack a degree of allocative efficiency. It's heavily state influenced. Loans are more favourably directed to other state-owned enterprises or state-supported private enterprises. So that lack of allocative efficiency in the financial sector was an important point in Mexico. So we see that here for both Mexico and China. It's also worth noting that because of the underdevelopment of the finance and banking sector, we saw problems with South Korea and their exposure to the Asian financial crisis. But the poor government control and the lack of financial reforms that were actually undertaken led Mexico into a debt crisis in the late 1980s, where they ended up defaulting on some of the national debt that they had actually accrued over this period. Yeah, the currency devalued significantly. What do we see since then? Well, I don't think we see that the reforms have been undertaken with the sort of bite and determination that we've seen within South Korea. Okay, so clearly we've got a need within Mexico to have a stronger state which can help actually support businesses, encourage entrepreneurship, encourage investment towards better economic growth, because this isn't great at all. It might be interesting for you to have a look at this 3-part mini-series, so the hyperlink will be in there, but it's also interesting if you want to go take a look at, for instance, the likes of Brazil. Brazil, not too dissimilar from this, having had a big financial crisis and subsequent recession in 2016 as a result of Dutch disease, where they had actually relied far too much on their primary products. The currency had appreciated and they lost their ability to actually trade competitively. Part of that was as a result of corruption. So that would provide another interesting case study for you to go and take a look at. Okay, that's it though, guys. Next time we'll have a look at Ireland and see what Ireland got right. Okay, thanks guys.